Hey y'all, happy Friday. Hope y'all are having a good week so far. Today is the last day of the notes that we were taking for this week. Um, so you will need the notes paper we've been working on Wednesday and Thursday. We are going to finish that up today, and then you all are going to turn that in whenever you finish. So you want to have that out and ready to turn in after you get through this one. And then next week we will do a little bit of review, one more Dynasty, and we'll call it good before break. Because next week is our last week before until Christmas break. So if you have any missing assignments and things like that you need to redo, you have the weekend and then next week, and then that's it. So keep that in mind as you finish up this week and we go into next week, that you have pretty much until Friday next week to get things turned in. And I plan on grading those projects or finishing them up hopefully this weekend, so it should be in there by the beginning of next week. So our last dynasty we were going to do this week is the Yuan Dynasty, and you can see that it lasted from 1279 to 1368 CE. And this dynasty is unique in that it was actually ruled by people who weren't ethnically Chinese. They were actually Mongolian, which is today would be this country right up here. So the terms you need to know for this tour today are Khan, which is a title given to rulers in Central Asia. Semu, people from Central Asia who lived in the Yuan dynasty of China. Han Sen are people who are from northern China. And the Nansen are people from southern China. Those terms will make sense here in a minute. So the origins of this dynasty actually starts outside of China, like I had mentioned, and started with a man by the name of Genghis Khan. This is not Genghis, by the way. This is somebody else. We'll get to in a second. He managed to unite the several different Mongol tribes of Central Asia. Like I said, it's just the northwest of China. And he set about establishing his control over the different tribes of Mongolia. And then after he managed to combine them, he started setting his sights outside of Mongolia. And soon after his death, eventually, the Mongol Empire would stretch from Russia in the west to Iraq in the south and China in the east. So I believe, as far as like total land area goes, the Mongol Empire was the largest empire in human history, just in like total land area. Genghis would die, however, in 1227, and it would be his grandson, which is this man here, whose name is Kublai Khan, who would ultimately put an end to the Song dynasty in China. So in 1279, Kublai Khan finally defeated the last elements of the Song dynasty, and he crowned himself emperor of the new Yuan dynasty. It's unique in that it was always run by a Mongol emperor and never someone of Chinese descent. Now, obviously, this made it very unpopular amongst the working classes of China, who, like anybody else, wanted a ruler from their home country. And the Mongol Yuan dynasty didn't do it. However, Kublai did encourage and promote international trade as part of the Yuan dynasty, and he even met Marco Polo on his travels from Italy to China. And I'll have you guys read a Marco Polo biography as well. So the Yuan did several things, and they also created a lot of controversy as well. They eliminated the civil service exams that the Han Dynasty had started. So if you remember, those were the exams that determined what positions you got in government. The Han Dynasty, the Mongols in the Yuan Dynasty ended that. They created a new social order, which looked as follows. So Mongols obviously at the top. The Semu, people from Central Asia, so Mongolia and other places. The Han-Ren, people from northern China, and then Nan-Ren, people from southern China. So this is the power structure you see there. And obviously, it could be broken down more by like what jobs you had and such. But this was the basis of it. The people who were of Mongol descent had more control, more power than people from Central Asia. Finally, people from the northern portions of China, and then lastly, people from southern China. Your tax status, how much you paid in taxes, depended on which group you belonged to. So Mongols obviously paid more or paid less in taxes than the Han would. So how this was set up, if you're at the top, more power, less you pay in taxes. Bottom, less power, more taxes you pay, if that makes sense. So like I said, this was a very unpopular dynasty in China, partially because they created a new law code that favored Mongols over Chinese. If, let's say, a murder was committed, if a Mongol was arrested for the murder, they might face just only a fine, like a really heavy fine, and be sent on their way. A Chinese individual, on the other hand, charged with the same crime, murder, could, in theory, face jail time, a fine, and be branded as a criminal, like literally branded with like a hot iron. And there are very well documented cases of where the punishments were unequal in that sense, where Mongols convicted of the same crime as Chinese citizens, the Mongols got a less stiff penalty than the Chinese did. So internally, this dynasty was not very popular. However, externally, they actually did quite a bit. They promoted international trade through the Silk Road and even established sea trade routes with other places. So they weren't popular in the sense of like domestic, like at home, but they did push the envelope as far as the military advances go. They attempted to invade Japan twice and failed. And there's actually an interesting story behind that one. It's a Japanese legend, rather. There's a legend that the Mongols were attempting to cross from Korea into Japan. And as they were on their boats going to invade Japan, a typhoon, which is a hurricane basically, came through and destroyed the entire Mongolian army. And the Mongols were obviously pushed back, tried it again several years later, the exact same thing happens. So on the 2 or 3 occasions that the Mongols attempted to invade Japan, a hurricane, typhoon came through and destroyed their army basically. And the Japanese called it kamikaze, which stands for divine wind. So that's where the phrase kamikaze comes from in Japan, is from these stories about the Mongols trying to invade Japan, essentially. Ultimately, these military campaigns in China, or in Japan and Vietnam and other places failed. And after the death of Kublai Khan, the Mongol Empire kind of collapsed on itself. And shortly after, the Yuan dynasty in China failed to continue on without him. And so eventually that dynasty ended as well. And so that is actually the PowerPoint for you all today. I'm going to have this article on here too. It's not very long. It's just this one page. I want you to read this too. We won't do any questions over it today, but we will next week. So I'm going to go ahead and post this for you now so you can have an idea of what to expect. It's just about Marco Polo and his travels to China and his adventures along the Silk Road, that kind of thing. So you look through this. We're going to do more with it next week, but go ahead and start looking through it now. And then on Canvas, once you are done with the notes, if you go here, this is where you will turn those in. So whenever you fill those out, you should have all of them filled out. Go ahead and turn those in here, and that'll be it for this week. And then we will continue on Monday. So as always, if you all have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, I hope you all have a good weekend, and I will see you on Monday.